Shamananda, you had his association maybe. You remember Tribhuvanath Prabhu? Yeah. Someone other Krishna took him away. A great inspiration for all the devotees all over the world, really. So today is his Tirubhav, the day of honoring his departure from the world. And as Bhaktivinoda Thakur says, he reasons ill who tell that Vaishnavas die while thou art living still in sound. The Vaishnavas die to live, and living try to spread the holy name around, or the holy life around. He was one of those persons. Although he appears to be no longer present, he's still present in spirit. So many devotees are still inspired because of Tribhuvanath's surrendered devotion, mood of and dedication to the holy name, complete faith in the holy name. So, Tribhuvanath Prabhu ki jai. I remember in Vrindavan, it was the year after he passed away. We were celebrating the first anniversary of his Tirubhav, and on that, it happened to be on that day. I don't know is this the Western date today? Going by the Western day or the Vaishnav calendar? Because it was a Kadashi when they celebrated it there, because they played a Prabhupada tape in Vrindavan on a Kadashi. It was amazing. It was Srila Prabhupada in 1974, I think it was, in New Vrindavan, giving a lecture. And the lecture said, Prabhupada was saying, the prime sign of one who loves God, he said it 3 times, as he wants to see his Lord's holy name spread all over the world. He said it 3 times. I thought it was kind of they didn't choose the lecture particularly, but it was so appropriate to Tribhuvanath because that was his mood. And that was the first anniversary of his Tirubhav. That was always his mood. Somehow or another spread the holy name. We may not be great scholars, we may not be very austere, we may not even be that pure, but to make that dedicated devotional endeavor to spread the holy name, the greatest gift to mankind. Jai Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jaya Kunja Bihari Gopi Jana Vallabha Giri Varadhari Jaya Gopi Jana Giri Varadhari Gopi Jana Vallabha Giri Varadhari Gopi Yashodanandana Prajajana Ranjana Yashodanandana Prajajana Ranjana Yashodanandana Braja Janaranjana Yamunatira Vanachari Yamunatira Vanachari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Gopijana Vallabha Girivardhari Gopijana Girivardhari Yashodanandana Braja Janaranjana Yashodanandana Braja Janaranjana Yashodanandana Braja Janaranjana Yamunatira Vanachari Yamunatira Yamunatira Vanachari Yamunatira Vanachari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jaya Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Srila Prabhupada ki jai, Shri Shri Radha Landaneshwar ki jai, Shri Shri Jagannath Baladev Subhadra ki jai, Shri Giriraj Maharaj ki jai, Shri Shri Gaurnitai ki jai, Guntaraj Srimad Bhagavatam ki jai. Go Premanandi, all glorious to the assembled devotees, all glorious to Shri Guru and Grand, all glorious to Shri Prabhupada. Nama Om Vishnu Vidaya, Krishna Prishtaya Bhutale, Srimate Bhaktivedanta, Swami Niti Namane, Namaste Saraswate Devi, Gauravani Pacharine, Navastasya Sanyavari Vistachadeshata. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
Reading Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 10, Chapter 87, Text 42. Please repeat. Shri Bhagavan Uvacha Iti Etat Brahmanaha Putraha Ashutya Atma Anushasanam Sanandanam Ata Anachuhu Siddhaha Yatva Atmanaha Gatim. Shri Bhagavan Uvacha Ityetad Brahmanak Putra Ashutyatmanushasanam Sanandanam Atanachu Siddhagyatvatmanogatim. Shri Bhagavan Uvacha Ityetad Brahmanak Putra Ashutyatmanushasanam Samandanam Matanachu Siddhagyatvatmanogatim. Shri Bhagavan Uvacha Ityetad Brahmanak Putra Ashuyatmanushasanam Sanandanam Matanachu Siddhagyatvatmanogatim. Shri Bhagavan Uvacha Ityetad Brahmanak Putra Ashuyatmanushasanam Sanandanam Matanachu Siddhagyatvatmanogatim. Shri Bhagavan Uvacha Mataji's.
Shri Bhagavan Uvacha
Shri Bhagavan Uvacha
Pramana Putra
Vijeta Brahmana Putra
Ashutyavatmanusha Sanandanam
Ashutayamanushasanam
Sanandanam Atana Archu
Sanandanam Atanachu
Sita Ganatvatmana Gatim
Siddhagatmanogatim.
Anyone else? Any other ladies? Shri Bhagavan Vacha Ityetad Brahmanak Putra Ashrutyatmanu Shasanam Sanandanam Matanarchu Siddhagyatvatmano Gatim Shri Bhagavan Vacha. The Supreme Lord Sri Narayan Rishi said, Iti, thus, Etat, this, Brahmanaha, of Brahma, Traha, the sons, Ashutya, having heard, Atma, about the self, Anushasanam, instruction, Sanandanam, the sage Sanandana, Ata, then, Anarchuhu, they worshipped, Siddhaha, perfectly satisfied, Gyatva, understanding, Atmanaha, their own, Gitim, ultimate destination. Translation and purport by disciples of Srila Prabhupada. The Supreme Lord, Sri Narayan Rishi said, having heard these instructions about the Supreme Self, the personality of Godhead, the sons of Brahma now understood their final destination. They felt perfectly satisfied and honored Sanandana with their worship. Purport. Srila Jiva Goswami explains that Atmanushasanam can be understood both as instructions given to benefit the Jiva's souls and as instructions about the living entity's relationship with the foundation of existence. Similarly, Atmanogatim means both the destination of the Jiva soul and the means of reaching the Supreme Soul. By hearing the 28 prayers of the personified Vedas, which comprise the elucidation of the Brahmopanishad verse spoken at the beginning of this chapter, the sages assembled in Brahmaloka made great progress towards their goal of pure love of God. We just run back. Some of you may have been present throughout the reading of this chapter. It's a long chapter. And at the very beginning of the chapter, Parikshit Maharaj is asking a question. And he asked that question about the first text. And it's a question which people often ask: how can you describe the Supreme Personality of Godhead with words which appear to be mundane? So he said, how can the Vedas directly describe the Supreme Absolute Truth, who cannot be described in words? The Vedas are limited to describing the qualities of material nature, but the Supreme is devoid of these qualities. The Vedas mainly dealing with description of the material nature, elevation to the heavenly planets. Some, of course, we mentioned yesterday, some information on liberation, path of liberation is there. But how can the Vedas directly describe that Supreme Personality of God who has no material qualities? But the Supreme is devoid of these, being transcendental to all material manifestations and their causes. And in the next verse, Sukadeva Goswami replies, the Supreme Lord manifested the material energy, the material intelligence, senses, mind, and vital air of the living entities so that they could indulge their desires for sense gratification, take repeated births, to engage in fruitive activities, become elevated in future lives, and ultimately attain liberation. Well, he's given us these faculties, but not just to enjoy sense gratification, that's kama, but to actually progress towards the ultimate goal of life. And that's not just the liberation, let's say, of merging into the Brahman, the impersonal liberation, but the ultimate, the Panchapurushartha, the fifth goal of life, is to obtain Krishna Pramartha Mahan, is to attain love for Krishna. That's the ultimate liberation. Not just to become free of the effects of the modes of nature, but to actually be situated, as the purport and verse today indicate, that this knowledge is the knowledge not just of the sadhya or the objective goal, but the sadhana or the means to obtain it. They are one and different, you could say. So understand the method, the means to obtain that ultimate goal of achieving love of Godhead. Those who came before, even our ancient predecessors, meditated upon this same confidential knowledge of the absolute truth. Indeed, anyone who faithfully concentrates on this knowledge will become free from material attachments and attain the final goal of life. So, just by hearing this knowledge, which removes darkness, removes ignorance, the doubts in your heart which have arisen out of ignorance should be slashed with a weapon of knowledge. Krishna says to Arjuna, arm with yoga, stand and fight. So that yoga, that linking up, is basically the process where the sadhana, where one can actually achieve the ultimate goal. For an aspiring devotee, the objective goal, basically speaking, is that sadhana. And Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur describes it as such that all that matters to me, I don't care, he says, if I go to heaven or hell. It really doesn't matter. All that matters to me are the instructions of my spiritual master. They're all that count. They are both the instructions of my spiritual master are my sadhana, but they're also my sadhya, my goal. To try to fulfill those instructions is not that there's a separate endeavor to try to become, even to go back to Godhead as such. Although at our stage, Prabhupada emphasized that principle, that we should desire to go back to Godhead, because we're still in, let's say, covered. We still have so many samskaras, so many impressions of the material world, and so many attractions towards it. So to cultivate that desire to go back to God, it is a part of our sadhana, you could say. But one who's actually achieved the perfection of devotional service doesn't even desire to go back to Godhead. He just desires to serve the Supreme Personality of Godhead. He doesn't care if you stay in this lifetime. And Lord Chaitanya's in lifetime after lifetime, I don't mind, as long as I have that chance to serve you. One devotee wrote a poem one day. In the poem, it's the last line. It was repetitive. Last line repetitive. It said it was a simple poem. It was early days. He said, "I just want to become a nice devotee, Srila Prabhupada," something like that. Prabhupada appreciated the poem, but he said, "Change the last line. Our goal is not to become a nice devotee, as per se, as if now I'm a nice devotee. Our purpose is to try to serve. That is our nature. Just let me become your servant." Or, taking it a step further, Gopi Bharta Pada Kamalam Dasa 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 Anudas, the servant of the servant, 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 as King Kulashekar emphasized even further. So this is the actual position, and this is the actual path. And it's also the perfection. In the spiritual world, it's not like, everyone's kind of right. Maybe, but that's not the mood. Right there with Krishna, as if, out my way, I'm going to, get out the way, I'm with Krishna. No, everyone's in the mood of serving others and introducing others to Krishna. Not that we're so great, Krishna, be with me. And sometimes devotees pray, they say, "Dear Radharani, please give me Krishna." There's one famous song which has that in mind. But that's not necessarily the mood, at least it's not the mood of our acharyas. Their mood is they're not qualified. And Prabhupada expressed the same mood also. It may have been here in London, I can't remember, but he expressed the same mood. That when he was asked, for instance, "Are you the spiritual master of this movement?" And Prabhupada said, "No, I'm trying to be the servant of this movement. I'm trying to, these young men and boys, they are qualified, these boys and girls, I'm not qualified. I'm trying to serve them. They are qualified to serve Krishna." That's the actual mood of a devotee. He doesn't feel that I'm qualified, I'm the master. He sees himself as a servant, even of one's own disciples. Not that now I'm the master, you're the servant, do what I say. That may appear to be like that, but that's not the inner mood. That's only for the sake of helping the disciple to actually progress in spiritual life. Not to control them, not to try to dominate or exploit, but rather to help them to advance in spiritual life. And that's the purpose of these prayers, of the prasad, as mentioned here, that one who hears, and anyone who faithfully concentrates on this knowledge will become free. As Krishna himself in the Bhagavad Gita says to Arjuna in the fourth chapter, one who dedicates himself to this knowledge attains this knowledge in due course of time. This knowledge removes all the doubts, all the sinful reactions. Pure knowledge. What to speak of putting it into practice. We see also in the first canto, third canto, different places emphasize the importance, very much the importance of hearing the message. Different messages may be, but they're all for the same objective goal, to ultimately understand or realize the nature of the absolute truth. And by attentively hearing, for instance, Prabhupada writes in the third chapter, first canto, last verse, anyone who hears this message, Sutta Goswami says, now hear it with rapt attention. And Prabhupada says, anyone who hears this message with rapt attention will see Krishna on the pages of the Srimad Bhagavatam. And this process of hearing, mentioned by, I think it's Lord Kapila Deva in the third canto, describing it as being the method, and he compares it, because these words, here spoken by the personified Vedas with the Srimad Bhagavatam, they are considered to be non-different than the lotus feet of the Lord, because they're coming from the lotus feet of the Lord, basically speaking. And they're compared to the river Ganges, which, as we know, by the grace of Lord Vamanadev, that Ganges water had touched his lotus foot. There's more to it, but that's a simple understanding, and entered into the universe, and thus purifies everyone. And it's Lord Shiva, it's describing Lord Shiva. He becomes even more auspicious by taking that Ganges water upon his head, because that Ganges water has touched the lotus feet of the Lord. It can purify one of all one's sinful reactions. It destroys the mountain of sin within our hearts. Just as the thunderbolt of Lord Indra destroys great mountains, it said, meditation upon the instruction or this message, the lotus feet of the Lord, whichever way you look at it, destroys that mountain of sin within our heart, because it has to be destroyed. Yesham tvantakutam papam jananam punya karmanam. In order to engage in devotional service with the requisite determination, one has to become freed from sinful reactions and as acting piously in this life and previous lives. Now, we may feel that, well, I'm a little short of the mark. Well, Prabhupada, as you may well know, when he was asked that question regarding this verse, I have no piety, I'm very, very sinful person. How is it I'm getting this opportunity? Prabhupada said, I've created your piety. The most pious thing of all is to take shelter of a pure devotee. That encompasses all other forms of piety. One doesn't need to make a separate endeavor if one takes shelter of a pure devotee of the Lord and engages in service taking shelter of pure devotee means that we're taking shelter of the instructions which he gives us. It's not some sentimental thing. It's a realistic thing, that we're taking his instructions seriously. That's the meaning of taking shelter of the pure devotee of the Lord. We make his instructions our life and soul, as Vishwanath Chakravarti said. I don't care if I go to heaven or hell, all that matters to me are the instructions of my spiritual master. That's the key. And this hearing faithfully removes these material attachments and attains the final goal of life. Prabhupada emphasized over and over how much we should hear the holy name carefully. Kindvadarada Nudinam. This is Rupa Goswami describes, if we carefully hear the name and regularly hear the holy name, then all the sinful reactions, all the illusions are destroyed right down to the root, not just on the surface. Some processes remove the surface, they free us from sinful reaction. But careful hearing the right thing from the right source in the right way removes the very root, not just, it's like sometimes you may, I don't know if any of you are gardening, some of you may garden, you cut the grass and you'll find the grass grows again, and the weeds also. Plants are like that because the root is still in the ground. If one wants to get rid of it, you have to get rid of the root, not just that which we can see. So it's like, sometimes we can see when we come to Krishna conscious movement initially, it's like, wow, whew, it's amazing. 4 regulated principles, chanting 16 rounds, getting up in the morning, Hari Bol, gold shower, joy. And it's all exciting in the beginning, and it's like, it seems like you make millions and such advancement, incredible. It's like very quick. So you've kind of cut down the grass, it looks very clean. But the roots are still there. And then suddenly they start growing up again. And not just the roots of favorable ones, but the roots of the weeds are still there. And then you think, what's going on? I thought it was all over. I thought it was all just a matter of, maybe a few weeks and I'll be back to Godhead. What's going on around here? Well, cloudy. If we're not careful, you've got to constantly. You can't just. It's like, okay, you cut the weeds down, follow the regulated principle. We're chanting a bit. We've got to go deeper if you want to get those roots out. You can't just keep. If you keep cutting it on the surface, same old thing. It's just going to keep popping up over and over again. And if we're not careful, we may commit offences also in the meantime, which we haven't done when we first joined, and that makes it the weeds become pretty strong. They don't, even we chant, they don't go down because we're committing some offences there. So we've got to go deeper in our hearing and chanting in order to remove the weeds, the roots of the weeds. Don't remove the root of the Bhakti creeper. It's kind of removed. It's never ultimately lost in the absolute sense, but at least for the time being, it's like uprooting the roots when we commit offences to Vaishnavas or the holy name. So you have to be very careful. Instead of uprooting the weeds, the roots of the weeds, we're uprooting the roots of our devotional creepers. We have to get those weeds out. That's by attentive and careful hearing of the holy name and pastimes, name, form, and pastimes of the Supreme Personality of God, His qualities, and so on. In this connection, he says, I will relate to you an oration concerning the Supreme Lord Narayan. Is about a conversation that once occurred between Sri Narayana Rishi and Narada Muni. Once, while travelling among the various planets of the universe, the Lord's beloved devotee Narada went to visit the primeval sage Narayan at his ashram. From the very beginning of Brahma's day, Lord Narayana Rishi has been undergoing austere penances in this land of Bharat, while perfectly performing religious duties and exemplifying spiritual knowledge and self-control, all for the benefit of human beings in both this world and in the next. There Narada approached Lord Narayana Rishi, who was sitting amidst sages in the village of Kalapa. After bowing down to the Lord, O hero of the Kurus, Narada asked him the very same question you have asked. As the sages listened, Lord Narayan related to Narada an ancient discussion about the absolute truth that took place among the residents of Janaloka. And you see, it's not like, yes, I'll tell you. No, he said, I'll tell you about a conversation that took place in Kalapa with Narayan Rishi and Narada Muni. And when Narada Muni made the inquiry, then Narayan Rishi says, yes, I'll tell you some ancient conversation that took place in Janaloka with the sages, like this. The personality of Godhead said, O son of self-born Brahma, once long ago on Janaloka, wise sages who resided there performed a great sacrifice to the absolute truth by vibrating transcendental sounds. This is a sacrifice. We have to perform sacrifice, giving up something if we want something better. We have to undergo a sacrifice. Yogya Sankirtanam Prayajanti Samedasha. Kali Yuga, the greatest sacrifice is the Sankirtan, the performance of the Sankirtan Yogya, sacrifice, Yogya sacrifice. So they were also, their sacrifice was vibrating transcendental sounds. maybe not the Hare-Krishna mantra, different time and circumstance, but they were same principle. The sages were mental sons of Brahma. We're all perfect celibates, and it's referring here to the 4 Kumaras, the mental sons of Lord Brahma. And many others maybe too, but specifically the 4 Kumaras. At that time you happened to be visiting the Lord on Shweta-dweep, that Supreme Lord in whom the Vedas lie down to rest during the period of universal annihilation, in whom the Vedas lie down. A lively discussion arose among the sages on Janaloka as to the nature of the Supreme Absolute Truth. Indeed, the same question arose then that you are asking now. Although these sages were all equally qualified in terms of Vedic study and austerity, and although they all saw friends, enemies and neutral parties equally, they chose one of their number to be the speaker, and the rest became eager listeners. Eager listeners. Become eager, lolium, desiring to hear this message. The more we develop this inclination, it may be a little artificial in the beginning. One has to make the effort to hear the subject matter, to hear the sound vibration, to hear about Krishna somehow or another, to hear about Krishna. This is the primary process of devotional service, to hear and chant about Krishna. Sri Sanandana replied, this is the one they chose, the exalted Sanandana, one of the 4 Kumaras. After the Supreme Lord withdrew the universe he had previously created, he lay for some time as if asleep, and all his energies rested dormant within him. When the time came for the next creation, the personified Vedas awakened him by chanting his glories, just as the poet serving a king approach him at dawn and awaken him by reciting his heroic deeds. Then they go on. So then we hear the Shrutis speaking, and these various prayers of the personified Vedas. And their prayers describe and explain, or let's say answer this query of Maharaj Parikshit about how can the Supreme Personality of Godhead, who has no material qualities, be described by what appear to be material sounds. You have to read all those 28 prayers of the personified Vedas to understand how is that possible. And by hearing those prayers, one can become freed. By hearing, one can make great progress towards the goal of pure love of God. Very purifying, simply to hear with attention. Srinvatam Sagata Krishna Punya Shravana Kirtana. That hearing that message of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, the Lord cleanses and removes all the dirty things from the heart. And one attains the ultimate goal, pure devotional service. And that's all it is pure devotional service. Is just when devotional service is freed from any other contamination of any kind, any other motivation, any other anartha, unwanted desires, etc. Okay, I just read purple. Where were we? What's purple? Here we are. Lost the verse. And Prabhupada, and rather Hridayananda Maharaj, whoever is writing this purport here, explains that Atmanu Shastram can be understood as both instructions given to benefit the jiva souls and as instructions about the living entity's relationship. So instructions which, so there's Sambandha and Abhideya, which a connection, what is our relationship with the Supreme Lord, and the means to realize or to come to the perfection of prayojana, which is basically what the Vedas are comprised of ultimately, meant for that purpose, to establish our relationship with the Supreme Lord, giving the means to realize that relationship. So there's one thing to know that we're the eternal servants of God, we're spiritual beings, the Supreme Lord is devoid of all material qualities, He's transcendental, and that we have an eternal relationship with Him, whatever relationship may be. It's one thing, but practically it's like knowledge. There's knowledge, and there's knowledge of how to use that knowledge, how to practically apply it. So that theoretical knowledge has to be put into practice. That's when Vigyan or realization comes, when we practically apply the knowledge which is given herein, whatever type of knowledge it may be, material or spiritual. That's the usual way we get the result, if we put the knowledge into practice. If, for instance, if someone has knowledge of how to cook, but you don't use it, it's not much use, is it? If I say, can you prepare me some samosa? Yes. I have the recipe. Here's the recipe. It's not going to satisfy one's hunger. One has to utilize the recipe and prepare the samosa. Otherwise it's nothing, it's just words. So the knowledge, the realization of that transcendental nature of the Supreme, the Vedas give, yes, you can say they're words and they may be received by us. They're emanating from the Supreme Personality of God, and from His perspective, everything is spiritual anyway. It just appears from our perspective to be material. But even if we take it as material, those words are specifically, if put into practice, will actually bring us to that spiritual platform to understand the transcendental nature of the personality of God. Jamma karma chame divyamevam yogati tattvata chatpati hampuna jamanaiti mameti sojana. The one who understands this transcendental nature of my appearance and activities in this world does not take birth again, but attains to my supreme abode, spiritual world. That understanding of Krishna's transcendental nature. And it can be even within the material energy, by working with the material energy in the proper way. The Vedas give us the proper direction how to work with the material energy so that we can gradually become purified. Rishi Kena Rishikesha Bhakti Seva Uchite. Engage our senses in the service of the master of the senses. And that way, Sarvopadi Nirmuktam Tatpadadvena Nirmalam. The heart becomes cleansed. One becomes freed of all material designation. That's how it works. Shravananadi Shuddha-chitti Kariyudai. By hearing and chanting Shuddha-chitti, the heart becomes pure. Kariyudai, just like when the sun rises, everything becomes clear. So similarly, this process of Shravananadi, hearing about Krishna, chanting about Krishna, is the process of Shuddha Chitta, of cleansing the heart, purifying the heart of all dirty things. The principle of the Sankirtan movement, to cleanse the heart of all the dust accumulated for years together. And then things become clear. One can see things for what they are when the heart is cleaned. So even whether we take it material or transcendentally, the words of the Vedas are specifically aimed at this principle to give direction whereby we can cleanse our consciousness so we can see things clearly. It's like muddy water is unclear. It's not that the water is unclear, it's just there's the mixture there. Consciousness by nature is pure, but it's mixed, adulterated with all kinds of other ideas, desires, so many things. Simply have to be cleansed, that's all, of the dirty desires and the dirty thoughts, etc. Purifying is easier, everyone can see things as they are. Or you take a pair of spectacles. If they're dirty, we can't see clearly. You have to clean them, that's all. And then things become clear. So we need that cleansing. The cleansing process is given by those who are clean. They give us the instructions, and following those instructions, one becomes pure in heart. One can then see things properly. Devotional service in its various forms is given by the pure devotees of the Lord for our benefit. Okay, we're going to finish there. We have a journey today to go on, and we have to get ready. Any questions? Very well.
Thank you, Mark. I just have one question. You spoke about uprooting the weeds.
The roots. Uprooting.
You spoke about uprooting the roots
Downroot.
of the roots.
Uproot.
So can you just give us some advice on how to actually do that? How to get the weed out?
Them. Well, how do you uproot roots? It sounds like no, that's not right, is it? How do you uproot the weed? Automatically means taking out the root, doesn't it? You don't need to say it twice.
Because
often a literary fault when you say it twice. I'll get pulled up on that one. Uproot the weeds, okay?
Because often they seem to keep growing back, no matter how hard you try.
How do you uproot weeds in general? Maybe you've been a gardener, I don't know. How do gardeners uproot weeds?
They have to dig down very deep.
Do they go dig down deep? Huh?
Sometimes it's really quite extreme.
Yeah, there's this plant called the gorse bush. I don't know if you know gorse bush. It's very, very popular among Scotsmen. They like the gorse bushes. There's a lot of gorse in Scotland. They use it in fencing. It's a bush that forms a fence. It's a thorn bush, you know. It's a very unpleasant bush when you get close to it. Looks nice from a distance. Got these yellow flowers on it. And it keeps the animals within the field, or keeps people out, whichever way you look at it. Keeps the animal in and the people out. So, so we've kind of got these fences. In a sense, it keeps the animal within us and the person out, you know, in one sense. Anyway, get back to the gorse bush. They cleverly took this gorse bush to New Zealand with the same intent as they use it in Scotland, but the climate in New Zealand is a little bit different. And this gorse bush went wild when it arrived in New Zealand. It was in ecstasy, you know. It expanded like a million times a minute or something, you know. And it grows like wildfire, you know, everywhere. If you give it half an inch and the gorse bush is there, you know, just like wildfire everywhere. And there's a constant battle trying to get the stuff out. Of course, they've developed some poisons, but the poisons don't just poison the gorse plant, they poison other things too. And that's the way they usually do it, because it's just too much to dig up. And the roots are so deep. They're so deep. They're so, you know, strong roots. You can't get the damn thing out. You got to have one of these diggers to get them out. You got to have one of these. Where they go in JC, whatever. Dig deep and get the whole. It's like getting a tree out of the ground. And it's only the plant's only this high, and the roots are about 4 times bigger than that or something. And the seeds last up to 80 years, even if you get the roots out. The seeds are in the ground. It's a constant battle, constant battle against the gorse. They don't have this problem in Scotland because they don't grow very, they're kind of held back by the tropical climate of Scotland, It's, it goes slowly.
Sounds like our problem.
Yeah, it's very similar to our problem. Even to get the root out, the seed's still there. You've got these seeds there, It's there's so many. It's very entangling, and it takes Tivrena Bhakti Yogena. It's a very Akama Sava Kama Vimuksha Kama Udavidi Tivrena Bhakti Yogena. That Tivrena is like very powerful force to remove these weeds at the root, to get them out. Well, as I mentioned, Kinvadavada Nudanam Rupa Goswami says we have to very carefully hear. They will keep coming. Here I am. And don't forget me. I'm your friend from countless lifetimes. Listen to me. You can leave Krishna till later. They come into your mind when you're chanting japa all the time, practically speaking. Or whatever we're doing, almost. They keep coming. So, maybe you are important, but just come back later. I've got an appointment with Krishna right now. You have to try to hear the sound. It's by the mercy of the Lord. Ultimately, it's by mercy. We haven't got the power to overcome the great knot that within the heart. That knot is a very entangling knot. Is overcome. Yadana Jasinaki Dar Karma Grantinda Mandalam Chandanti Kovidas Tasya Kona Kurtaratim. That knot is cut. Chandanti cut that karma grunta, that knot of material attachment, bondage in this world, by remembering the personality of Godhead. It's coming into the exposure of the sun, Krishna, Surya, Sun, Maya, Andhakara. And we've got to keep exposing ourselves to Krishna, become conscious of Krishna by serving those pure devotees who are freed of all vice, great services done, Shushu Danasya Vasudeva Gadarachi. By such service, one develops an attraction for hearing the message of Godhead. By hearing the message of Godhead, the Lord uproots, removes all these dirty things within the heart. It takes time. And we have to try to be very vigilant in executing the instruction of the spiritual master to our best capacity, and try to hear the sound of the holy name. It's ongoing. It's like getting those gorse bush roots out the ground. You have to keep. Eventually, you do. You can clean the ground, but there's a secret there too. Because if you just leave it like that, within a few weeks they're back again. Now, one thing they don't like, and they will not grow. The gorse bush will not grow if you grow native plants. The British got rid of all the native plants and started growing their own things. Now, as soon as you grow the native plants, the gorse will not grow. Even if the seed is there, it will not grow. So we have to grow native plants. It's not enough just to uproot those plants. It has to be replaced with, proper devotional service. And then gradually, the weeds going down deeper and deeper they won't be able to grow. Prabhupada said, even though the roots and the seeds may be in the ground, if the ground is flooded, they will not grow. So you have to flood our lives with devotional service, even if there's potentially the roots and the seeds are still there. And it may take some time before they completely die or are uprooted entirely. But we have to keep our surface flooded with devotional service so that they can't grow anyway. And so then we can at least make progress in spiritual life without becoming strangled or diverted. That's the secret, to become full in devotional service. Mamcha yoga bicharana bhakti yoga na sevate. Sugunan samatityayan brahma bhuyaya kalpate. And even if there are still some roots there, one can still, let's say, as long as one's not cultivating those roots, then one can, or those seeds, then one can still go back to Godhead, even though there may be potentially some traces are there. But if we keep ourselves flooded with devotional service, don't waste time. The problem is that we tend to, and there's more tendency, easier maybe now than it used to be. It used to be quite obvious that you're in Maya. And it's kind of obvious now, but it's kind of covered over by modern technology. As you spend 12 hours a day on the computer, on your mobile phones. I'm preaching, Prabhu. Preaching. Yes. Devotional service, Prabhu. Facebook, text messaging, God knows what. You don't know what's going on. And the pictures that come up are nobody's business. Isn't it? Much of the time. And that all waters the weed. There's a beautiful book out by Giriraj Maharaj, Watering the Seed, isn't it? Watering the Seed? I'm going to write a corollary called Watering the Weed. I think it'd be very relevant to all of us, Not that we should be watering the weed, but the fact is that oftentimes we are watering the weed. So you've got to avoid watering the weed, and you've got to know what the real seed is and water the real seed and make sure that's always watered, so that the weed can't grow. But if we mix it, and we're watering, 1 drop for the seed of devotional service and 1 gallon for the weed. It's no wonder. No one's looking now. I can do what I want. Onto the internet, onto the surfing, whatever it is, this thing, that thing. Suffering. Get caught in the web, the network. Get caught in the web of modern technology if you're not careful. Get caught. It used to be television. Now it's something else. Tell-lie-vision. Tele-lie-vision. That's all it is. Tele-lie-vision. And now we have go ogle. Google. Go ogle. That's what it means. Go ogle. Ogle means to become captivated by some object of the senses. Go ogle. And Yahoo is Maya-hu. 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 You. Get into Maya. All these things are traps to help us to, become further implicated if we're not careful. They can be used, but be careful. Not abused. You gotta be careful of our association, careful not to offend Vaishnavas. That would definitely water the weed. Very much so. The weeds love to grow. They flourish on Vaishnava Aparad. They flourish. Nama Aparad also. Any Aparad. And we have to try to cultivate that which is favourable to the seed of devotional service to the Vaishnavas. What is the Bhaktivinoda Thakur thing? Shuddha Bhakata Charana Renu Bhajana Anukula. Isn't it? Service to the Vaishnavas, the dust of their lotus feet, the waters that wash their lotus feet. We have to take these favourable substances. And Prahlad Maharaj Rahugana, Jad Bharat said the same thing, that one has to smear the dust of the lotus feet upon one's body. Which doesn't mean, it can be literal, but it really means to take their instruction as one's heart and life and soul, no matter what comes along. Hare Krishna. Okay, Srila Prabhupada and Kirtan. Lots of Kirtan. More Kirtan. Not enough Kirtan. Not enough Kirtan. That's the best Kali Yuga way, especially of getting those, drowning out those weeds and those seeds and whatever it is of the material world. Flood them out with Kirtan. Loud Kirtan. Loud Kirtan. Not just like, we did it last year. We went on Harinam last month. Why are you asking me again? Yeah, I went to Arti yesterday. I've already chanted my rounds. You don't need to chant anymore. I finished my rounds. I don't need to chant anymore. Right? I did my half hour's reading already. I went to class this morning. That's it. It's enough. No wonder we're not, sometimes that mentality is there. No wonder the weeds and the roots in the seed form are not being sufficiently removed from our consciousness. We have to be eager, more and more and more. More kirtan, more reading, more hearing, more service. Hare Krishna, Srila Prabhupada ki jai. You've got to get ready to go. All glories to Srila Prabhupada. Shri Radha-Krishna ki jai. Shri Gaunitai Jagat Baladev Sabhadra ki Grantharaj Srimad Bhagavatam ki jai.
Any scores we have? Someone has the scores? I'd like to thank His Holiness Jananda Maharaj for being with us for the last couple of days. Hare Krishna Maharaj, hopefully you'll come back this way on your tour. Are you going up north now, Maharaj?
We're going north, up to Scotland to see the gorse bushes. And then we're coming back down again.
Right, Hare Krishna. Please
well, that's the plan anyway, we'll see what happens.
Please make your plan coming via this way, Maharaj.
Come via this way. Well, I've got to. I've got an appointment around the corner. A couple of appointments. 27th, I think we come back.
Hare Krishna. His Holiness Jananda Maharaj ki jai. Hare Krishna. There's some sweets for Maharaj. Hare Krishna. So now the sweets and Sankirtan results before anything from the shop. No? Any more little bits of paper anywhere? The shop scores? No. Okay. So we on book distribution we have 7 devotees going out, beginning with Bhakti Gabriela. She collected 3 Lakshmi points and distributed 1 medium book for 0.50 book points. Hare Krishna. Gergo Raki, excuse me. She collected 15 Lakshmi points and distributed and Bhava Bhakti's mentor group collected 41 Lakshmi points. 4 small books, 2 big books, 9 Mahabhi books, and 20 books. Collected 38 Lakshmi points. 39 Lakshmi points, distributed 14 small books, 36 medium books for 21.50 book points. Back to Vayu Prabhu. Collected 53 Lakshmi points on Harinam, is that correct? 53 Lakshmi points on Harinam. Distributed 33 medium books, 3 big books, 2 Mahabig books for 23.50 book points. Back to Eldarash. Did I pronounce that right? Huh? What's the pronunciation? Your name again is? Eldarash. Something like that. Eldarash. So he collected 169 Lakshmi points. Wow. Is that in one day? One day? Few days. 1 week. Still, it's great. Fantastic. Doesn't speak much English. You speak English? Little bit. See? Just speaks a little bit English and still distributes books. So, collected 169 Lakshmi points, distributed 20 small books, 42 medium books, 4 big books, 22 Maha big books for 74 book points. And Krishna Kumar Das collected 265 Lakshmi points, distributed 40 small books, 56 medium books, 2 big books, 61 Maha big books for 162 book points. Prabhupada's Transcendental Book Distribution Key. And in Govinda's Pure Vegetarian Restaurant, which served a total of 269 customers and collected 1,988.97 Lakshmi points. And in Krishna's community, in Radha's Boutique, we distributed 5 books and collected 150.25 Lakshmi points. And in our charity shop in Rochester, called Closet Krishna, we collected 192 Lakshmi points, distributed 1 medium book and 1 Maha big book. Okay, so before we say a prayer, ask for service to help serve Prashad, lady side. Down on the men's side, to help the serve Prashadam. 1, 2. And to clean the temple room after Prashadam. 1, 2, 3. Thank you. 4. Hare Krishna. So now let's read our prayer before we bring up the Prashadam. Dear Shri Shri Radha Landanishvara, Jagannath Baladev and Subhadra, Shri Giri Govardhan, and Shri Shri Gaunitai, we offer our most respectful obeisances unto you. With a mood of deep gratitude and appreciation, we request your causeless mercy upon us. For your pleasure, if you so desire, we wish to erect a holy place of your transcendental pastimes that will attract unlimited souls to your service and fulfill the vision of your pure devotee Srila Prabhupada for London. Please enable us to cooperate together in order to satisfy you in this way. We, your surrendered servants, humbly beg. Jai Shri Shri Radha Landanishvara ki jai, Jagannath Baladev Lady Subhadra ki jai, Shri Shri Gaunitai ki jai, Shri Giriraj Govardhana ki jai. Hare Krishna. So let's bring up the Prashadam, get on with our day's duties in serving the Lord. Hare Krishna.